The FBI, now an ABC News consultant, is with us. And Brad, the authorities have been making this warning, which until now has seemed kind of vague, but this is exactly what they're talking about.
It is exactly what they're talking about, and it goes to what I mentioned earlier, Aaron, is that you don't typically, assuming this is a individual or let's say two guys that decide on their own, they're aligned with ISIS or somebody else, and they decide to launch this attack, it really goes to how good is your local intelligence in the various ethnic communities, in this case probably in and around Berlin. Some are good, some aren't good, because it's those type of tips that you're really going to need, because none of these things happen at the spur of the moment. They've probably thought about this. It's a few days before Christmas. They picked that market for obvious reasons you all have already talked about. Easy access, people crammed in, no place for them to go. We'll have to see where the truck came from. I'm going to guess it's either stolen or rented. And they picked that mark. And so somebody knows that they rented that truck. Somebody knows that they were going to plan some sort of activity like this, because it's just what happens in every one of these cases. So, that is a tough nut to crack, and we have a problem here in this country with that also, of really getting timely intelligence, because it really depends on how much they really trust law enforcement to tell them.
Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. Polish television has talked to the owner of a truck company in Poland, which apparently had rented the truck out. It was said to be parked on the outskirts of Berlin for unloading. The company at the moment cannot get in touch with the driver. That may be because we've just learned from German police that the driver of the truck that slammed into this Christmas market has been arrested near the scene. Now, German media has said there were two people inside the truck, one in custody and another dead, but we are still waiting for German police to confirm. But right now they say that the driver of the truck that slammed into the Christmas market, leaving 9 people dead, has been arrested near the scene. Perhaps tried to make a run for it, we're not sure. But the carnage left behind is apparent, as authorities are now trying to tend to all the injured after this crowded Christmas market came under apparent attack. We say apparent because authorities have not said whether this was simply some kind of tragic accident or whether this was an attack in the style of Nice. ABC News consultant John Cohen, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security, has been watching these developments all day with us. John, this is, as we talk about the ease of access here, makes this particularly insidious because the truck, and we don't know this, but could have been going at a fairly high rate of speed.
Yeah, that's true, and that's a really good point. I mean, what we've really seen, just as we've seen an evolution in the types of people who are carrying out these attacks, we've really seen a change in the types of tactics that are being used in Europe and in the United States. And again, we don't know. I just want to keep stressing that. We don't know for sure. I mean, this could have been some other type of problem. It could have been a mechanical problem with the truck. It could have been some other type of issue with the driver. We really need to wait and hear from the authorities before before we focus on the fact that this was a terrorist attack. I mean, it's a tragedy, regardless. But what we've seen in Europe, what we've seen in the U.S. is this movement towards people who are inspired by terrorist ideologies, who do, attacks that are not highly sophisticated, using firearms, using knives, using vehicles. And they are just as successful in killing large numbers of people and injuring large numbers of people. So, based on our earlier conversation, we really need to start thinking differently about how we prevent these types of attacks. These are not the same types of attacks we were dealing with, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I know that there's a lot of discussions going on in Europe and the U.S. about how counterterrorism authorities and law enforcement need to think differently about the threat.
And it comes, as on a day when we have seen elsewhere in the area, an attack, a deadly attack, the shooting death of the Russian ambassador to Turkey at an art museum by someone shouting about Syria and Aleppo. We've seen an attack on an Islamic center in Switzerland with at least 3 people dead there. I mean, John, as you say, the variations all seem to are all kind of in and out, and people have to keep watch for everything. I mean, the law enforcement's facing a tall order here.
Well, In the conversations that I've had over the last couple of weeks with law enforcement authorities and intelligence authorities in the U.S. and in Europe, there is the highest level of concern I've seen in years. They are concerned about the frequency of attacks, the tempo of these attacks, the fact that these types of attacks are taking place with or being carried out by people who aren't on the radar screen, and it's a huge, huge challenge. This is a complicated, it is a very intense threat environment we're in right now in Europe and in the United States.
Eyewitnesses say it appeared to be a deliberate attack on that Christmas market in Berlin that killed 9 people and left many more injured, but the authorities have not yet said for sure whether this was some kind of an attack that brings to mind what happened in Nice over the summer and killed more than 80 people, or whether this was simply a very bad accident. Either way, a large truck has crossed the highway and the sidewalk, slammed into this Christmas market in Berlin. We've seen a Christmas tree, a decorated tree, fallen, a number of the stalls splintered, and the remnants under the tires of the truck, along with smashed glass. This large Scania truck may have originated in Poland, where Polish television has spoken with the owner of the company that either rented it out or had a driver. The driver is said to be arrested at the scene or not far from the scene of the market. German authorities, or German media, had said that there were 2 people in the truck, 1 dead, 1 under arrest, and so we're still waiting for German authorities to say officially. But it all comes at a time when the State Department has been warning American travelers about the possibility for attacks during the Christmas holiday and the surrounding season. ABC's Steve Gomez is looking at all of this. Steve, how worried should we be now in this country, given the pace of what we've seen and what's been warned about in Europe?
Well, it's definitely something that we should be worried about. It's not that we should be more worried now after seeing this. There have just been so many attacks worldwide, not just in the U.S., but everywhere. And as we're talking about the variations, I mean, these attacks are coming in all different shapes and sizes, weaponry, and different types of people, and so on. So we just have to be prepared. I mean, this is something, it has to be on our radar. We have to be thinking about the different ways, the different circumstances that we are going to walk into what could be potentially a situation, and how would we react to it. And every counterterrorism official, law enforcement official, private security official, this is on the top of their list as far as what they discuss with the community and the businesses that are out there that could have a large crowd and so on. They're constantly talking about what are the measures that you're taking to harden the target. You know, how are you using any kind of threat intel that comes across your desk? You know, are there places where people can escape in case there is something that's going on? These are the kinds of conversations that just have to constantly be engaged in from law enforcement, government, business, community, everybody. And another point that's of major importance is the fact that the intel that law enforcement and the community have the ability to generate in order to try to identify these people. You know, a lot of times these people are just flying under the radar. But again, you know, it's very important for us to highlight that there are always little red flags, little clues that pop up out of nowhere, and the community really has to be aware of this. They have to be looking for that, and they got to say something. So these are the important things, because this just isn't going away. It hasn't gone away, and especially right now, Christmas season, holiday season, you know, there's going to be a lot of crowds out there, and they got to be aware.
Right now, German authorities, we're told, are working on the assumption that this was a deliberate attack and have put the city on a terror alert. The tweets from police in Berlin have urged people to stay away from the scene to make sure that emergency vehicles can get through. This is right in the heart of where 2 highways sort of run alongside this market. ABC's Kateri Jochum lived in Germany for 10 years, now back stateside. We can take advantage of your knowledge of the geography, but crowded, ease of access do make this seemingly a ripe target.
Yeah, it definitely would have been incredibly crowded this time of night. People would have just gotten off of shopping. It's right in the middle of not just the heart of West Berlin, but really the central shopping district for West Berlin, for that part of the city. So there are shops and department stores up and down both sides of the street. Then there are these 2-lane highways on either side of this square, almost a triangular square, in the between them, where this church sits, the Memorial Church, half bombed out after World War II. And that is one of the most favorite, I guess I would say, Christmas markets in the city because of the proximity to all of the other shopping, but also because it has this beautiful church that's lit up at night. You have a brand new church that has bright blue windows. And so it has a very romantic atmosphere. And I'm sure there were not just a lot of Germans, but also a lot of tourists. It's a huge tourist attraction. So I could imagine that among those who were hurt or maybe even killed, we will find a lot of tourists.
Such a splendid Christmas scene shattered by what appears to be a deliberate attack. 2 people in the seat of a truck, a large, almost 18-wheeler type truck that slammed into a Christmas market in Berlin. 9 people are dead. Many more are injured. We have heard a number of 50 injured, but that has not been independently confirmed by ABC News. German police say they have arrested the driver of the truck near the scene of what they're assuming was a deliberate attack, although they haven't said for sure that this wasn't some kind of terrible accident. The assumption by the German authorities is this was a deliberate attack, and now we are waiting for answers to see who may have carried it out and why. Certainly, if this was an act of terrorism, countries all over the world are going to be on higher alert, as these outdoor Christmas markets are a fixture in many places, including this country this time of year. I want to get one more word from Brad Garrett, if I could, ABC News consultant now, formerly of the FBI. As you understand what's gone on here, Brad, what comes to mind?
Well, a couple of things. Now enough time has passed, Aaron, that they've ID'd the deceased person in the truck, the driver that's still alive. The question will be, are they the people that started with the truck from Poland to the place where it was apparently parked not that far from Berlin? What is the connection of those people to extremist groups, extremist organizations, etc.? Because one of the things you do want to immediately figure out is, does this go beyond these 2 guys? In other words, if you go to, I'm not comparing these, but just think about this. You look at Paris, and are there other locations where other people are going to do what I'm going to call these low-tech attacks, driving a truck into a crowd, pulling a knife, etc.? Are they on the drawing board for maybe a loose-knit group of people?
Brad Garrett, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. The mayor of Berlin said a moment ago the situation appears to be under control, but 9 people are dead and many more appear to be injured after a large truck plowed into a Christmas market in Berlin. Stalls knocked over, people lying injured on the ground, tended to by emergency workers. 1 person has been arrested, and the investigation now continues. I'm Aaron Katursky. You've been listening to live coverage from ABC News.
ABC News.
Wenn ihr so spannend gefällt.
Thank you.